مرحبا بكم في حلقة جديدة من برنامج عالم الطاقة نناقش فيها رسائل تحذيرية حول جهود مكافحة التغيير المناخي. إكسون موبيل تستبعد وصول العالم للحياد المناخي بحلول 2050. وعلى الطرف الآخر وزير سياسة المناخ الدنماركي يدعو لتسريع الجهود ويحذر من نفاذ الوقت. الوقت ينفذ والوصول للنتائج المطلوبة مهمة ليست بالسهلة. هذا هو فحوى الرسائل التي تصدر بين الحين والآخر حول جهود مكافحة التغيير المناخي. شركة الطاقة الأمريكية إكسون موبيل قررت الخروج عن صمتها وتحذير العالم من أن وصول العالم للحياد المناخي بحلول 2050 هو أمر مستبعد للغاية، نظراً لأن سيناريو كهذا سيتسبب بانخفاض معايير المعيشة، وهو أمر قد لا يكون مقبول لدى الناس. بالتوازي مع ذلك دقت المنظمة العالمية للأرصاد الجوية ناقوس الخطر في تقريرها الأخير بعد أن كشفت عن أن ارتفاع درجة حرارة الأرض في طريقه لتجاوز عتبة 1.5 مئوية خلال السنوات الخمس المقبلة. هذا الارتفاع وإن كان مؤقتا وفقا للمنظمة إلا أنه يعني تجاوز نقطة في غاية الأهمية في الجهود الدولية. اتفاق باريس للمناخ نص على إبقاء ارتفاع درجات الحرارة في هذا القرن دون 2 مئويتين ومحاولة الوصول بهذا الرقم إلى 1.5 مئوية. تخطي هذه العتبة الخطيرة يستدعي تسريع الجهود العالمية لخفض الانبعاثات، والتي ينبغي أن تهبط بنحو 43% بحلول عام 2030 إذا ما أراد العالم تجنب هذا السيناريو الخطير. ولكي يحدث ذلك ينبغي على العالم تسريع الجهود، وتحديدا في مجال التمويل. في هذا المجال التقديرات تشير إلى أن العالم بحاجة لزيادة التمويلات والاستثمارات المرتبطة بالمناخ بنحو 2.8 مليار دولار خلال العقد الحالي، في حين أن العالم لا يزال يواجه فجوة في التمويل المناخي، أي نقص في الاستثمار بما يقارب 1.5 تريليون دولار سنويا. هذه تقديرات بنك جولدمان ساكس. صحيح أن المهمة ليست سهلة على الإطلاق، لكنها ليست مستحيلة كذلك، فتحقيق هذا الهدف لا يزال ممكنا، ولكن بشرط توحيد مختلف الجهود على مستوى العالم. ينضم إلينا الآن من كوبنهاغن وزير التعاون الإنمائي وسياسة المناخ العالمية الدنماركي دان يورغنسن. مرحبا بك معالي الوزير، وسؤال مباشر لك: هل ما يزال هناك فرصة للحد من ارتفاع درجات الحرارة العالمية بأقل من 1.5 درجة مئوية وفقا لاتفاق باريس برأيك؟
There is still a chance, but there's no doubt that the global community, meaning all countries on this planet, needs to deliver more, especially the countries who are the biggest emitters. We know from the science that as a global community, we need to reduce our emissions by more than 40% from now until 2030. So we are really in a hurry.
طيب، بواقعية ما هو السيناريو القابل للتحقيق فعليا على الأرض والذي قد يمكننا من الوصول إلى 0 انبعاثات كما هو مطلوب؟
Well, we need to use a combination of different tools to get there. One is more energy efficiency. So actually it's possible to save a lot of energy and be more efficient and rational in the way that we use energy. Second is that we need to use a lot of renewable energy. So instead of fossils, we should use wind and solar and geothermal and other sources of renewable energy. If we do those things, then that will take us very close to where we need to be.
طيب، عظيم. إذن كيف لنا اليوم أن نقدم محفزات اقتصادية للأطراف خصوصا الممولة حتى تستثمر أكثر في الطاقة المتجددة والتكنولوجيا المطلوبة أيضا؟
Well, the good news is that we can actually get very far by using existing technologies, like, for instance, wind power and solar. And actually, if you look at the price of these renewables, they are more than competitive with fossil fuels. In most cases, for instance, offshore wind will be cheaper than a coal power plant. So actually, we are in a situation now where it will be most rational for most countries to look at investing in renewables instead of fossils. Having said that, of course, there's no doubt that we need to mobilize also more private financing into mitigation efforts. And here, a lot of countries, like my own, Denmark, of course, needs to step up and do more in order for us to help the private financing also be utilized. We can do that by utilizing our own investment banks, of course, but we can also do that by putting public money into the blend. Apart from that, it's important that the MDBs, especially the World Bank, are reformed so that they, in the future, to a larger extent, also help mobilize more private funding to mitigation efforts.
طيب، الحقيقة أن هناك حاجة لخلق منظومة واحدة موحدة تضم كل الدول المتقدمة والأهم النامية منها. فمن هو برأيك المعني الأبرز بذلك؟
Well, it's very clear that a lot of emerging economies, also developing countries on this planet, are in dire need of help. They need help to mobilize investments in both climate adaptation measures and mitigation measures. And there, the World Bank is a good example of an institution that can do more and that will do more. This year, we are actually discussing how to reform the bank, how to make its mission wider than it already is. For decades, the primary mission of the bank has been to eradicate poverty, which it should still be in the future, obviously. But because of climate change and because of how climate change is already affecting many of the most vulnerable countries on the planet, really now is the time to also, from the World Bank's perspective, look at how to mitigate and how to help adapt to climate change.
عظيم. في حديث سابق لك ذكرت بأن كوب 28 هو الأهم منذ مؤتمر باريس ب 2015. لماذا؟
Well, this is the first COP since Paris, where the Paris Agreement was approved, where we take stock, so to speak. This means that we have to evaluate how far we've gone, how close to our target of staying below 1.5 degrees we are, and what we need to do to remedy the situation if we're not on track. And it's fair to conclude already now, even before we meet, that we are definitely not on track. We need to do far more with regards to reducing our emissions if we are to keep temperature increases under control. Also, we need to mobilize more financing to help especially the more vulnerable and poorer countries on the planet adapt to climate change. So there are a lot of things that needs to be discussed and hopefully also concluded on in an ambitious manner at the COP meeting.
ضمن الأمور اللي ذكرتها أيضا أنه وخلال كوب 28 الذي سيقام في الإمارات يجب وضع هدف عالمي للطاقة المتجددة. أعطنا السيناريو المطروح من وجهة نظرك هنا.
Well, we've discussed for many years now that it's necessary to phase out fossils. This is also true, and I would also like stronger wording on that in the conclusions of the COP meeting, that we need to fossil not only coal, as is mentioned today in the text of the COP, but also other fossil fuels. It's also necessary, however, not only to look at what it is that we want to get rid of, what it is that we need to phase down and phase out, we need to also look at what should then replace these sources of energy, because the planet will need energy in the future, obviously. The population on our planet will grow, and hopefully more and more countries will also develop their economies and become bigger and thereby need more energy. So what are the alternatives. And here I think it would be an extremely strong signal if we adopted a global target for renewables. This would also show the world, show our business communities, show our civic societies, show our populations that it is actually possible to have a prosperous future in which there is affordable energy for all, in which our industries can flourish, whilst at the same time fighting climate change.
نعم. لكن العالم اليوم منقسم حول هذه النقطة بالتحديد، وإمكانية أو قدرة الطاقة المتجددة لوحدها على تزويد العالم بما يحتاجه من طاقة. اليوم عم نشوف الاتجاه أكثر لطاقة أحفورية نظيفة، يعني التقاط الكربون وغيرها من التقنيات التي تخفض الانبعاثات.
Well, in most cases, we will actually have alternatives to fossils, meaning that we can replace oil, gas, or coal with alternatives that do not emit greenhouse gases. And where that is possible, we should do it. Now, in some instances, we will not have that opportunity yet, at least with known technology. So there, it might be a good idea to apply carbon capture and storage, meaning that we take the carbon from the production and catch it and store it in the underground, either below the sea or below the ground. In that case, even though we've burned fossils, the emissions will not reach the atmosphere. And in that sense, it could also be a part of the solution. But as I said, that should only be done where there are no alternatives. In the instances where we have alternatives, it'll be far cheaper and far better for societies to use these alternatives like solar and sun power.
جميل. طيب اليوم إذا سألتك عن الأولويات الثلاثة الأهم لتحقيق هذه الأجندة الطموحة، أولويات هي الأبرز التي يجب التحرك لتنفيذها بأسرع وقت، ما هي؟
Well, I think it's impossible to mention just one thing because we need a holistic approach. So we need many things, but the most important ones are we need a very clear roadmap of how much we need to reduce our emissions between now and 2030. How much do we need to reduce, and how do we do it? Second, we need more financing. So the developed world needs to be able to mobilize $100 billion every year. Actually, it should have been done from 2020 on to 2025. It hasn't been done yet. That needs to be remedied. We need to mobilize that money now. Thirdly, I would say that the focus on climate adaptation needs to be there. We need a conclusion on a global target for financing for global adaptation.
وزير التعاون الإنمائي وسياسة المناخ العالمية الدنماركي دان يورغنسون، شكرا جزيلا لوجودك معنا اليوم. إذن فاصل قصير نتابع من بعده في عالم الطاقة. ورقة التكاليف، العنصر الحاسم في تحديد مصير الطاقات النظيفة. عوامل عدة لعبت دورا في صعود نجم الطاقة النظيفة في السنوات الأخيرة، لكن ورقة التكاليف كانت بمثابة العامل الحاسم الذي جعل هذه الطاقة قادرة على المنافسة مع المصادر الأخرى. على مدى العقد الماضي تراجعت تكاليف الطاقة الشمسية بنحو 85%، فيما هبطت تكاليف لطاقة الرياح بنسبة وصلت إلى 55% تقريباً. الأمر ذاته ينطبق على تكاليف بطاريات السيارات الكهربائية التي تراجعت هي الأخرى بنحو 90% منذ عام 2010. طبعاً هذا مهد الطريق لتزايد انتشار هذه السيارات، وبفضل هذا التراجع الكبير في التكاليف باتت الطاقة المتجددة تشكل نحو 83% من الطاقة الكهربائية المضافة خلال العام الماضي، فيما نمت حصة السيارات الكهربائية بنسبة كبيرة كذلك. لكن البعض يرى أن هذا التراجع في التكاليف لا يعكس الحقيقة المطلقة. مثلا على مستوى الطاقة المتجددة هناك حاجة لوجود محطات طاقة احتياطية لتأمين الكهرباء عندما لا تكون الطاقة المتجددة متاحة. ولا ننسى أيضا الحاجة لتشييد محطات لتخزين هذه الطاقة متى ما كان ذلك ممكنا. هذا وهناك أيضا نظرية أن ربحية شركات الطاقة المتجددة لا تزال موضع تساؤل. بحسب تقديرات بنك جي بي مورغان فإن نحو 40 إلى 60% من الشركات المدرجة في مجال الطاقة المتجددة من المستبعد أن تسجل تدفقات نقدية إيجابية خلال 2023. في جميع الحالات يبقى التراجع القياسي في تكاليف الطاقة النظيفة وتحديدا المتجددة واحدة من أهم التطورات التي شهدتها أسواق الطاقة هذا القرن، وهو تطور سيلعب دور حاسم في إعادة رسم خريطة الطاقة العالمية. كنت قد التقيت بالرئيسة التنفيذية لأوجي سي آي كلايمت انفستمنتس براتيما رانجا راجن التي كشفت عن أن النصف التكنولوجيا التي يحتاجها العالم في مجال مكافحة التغيير المناخي هي غير موجودة حتى الآن، الأمر الذي يسلط الضوء على أهمية تعزيز الاستثمارات. أترككم مع هذه المقابلة على أن يتجدد اللقاء يوم الثلاثاء المقبل. إلى اللقاء.
Today, in terms of achieving net zero, about half the technologies that we need are already available. And for those technologies, we need to adopt them, we need to scale them. And that takes time and effort too, because we have to figure out how to put them into an already existing energy system. But half the technologies are not even available today. So they need invention, they need then to be developed and scaled and then brought into our ecosystems. So we need to do both. We need to start adopting today's technology as well as keep developing the next generation technologies. But technology can solve a lot of the challenges we have. But just remember, to actually adopt technologies, we might have to change the way we think. We might have to change our mindset and the way we operate. So it's never just technology alone. It is human interaction as well.
خليني أركز على هذه النقطة. تغيير التفكير بأي شكل، وعن من هنا نتحدث؟ حكومات، الأشخاص، الشركات، أو النظام كله؟
Yes, and yes. So it's true. Some of this is competence, right? Because we're trying new things. We've never been on this journey before as a globe. We've never had to decarbonize. We thought about other things. But also it is about thinking about things not just as the cheapest way to get a product made, the cheapest way to deliver service, but we should think about it in the most resource efficient way, in the lowest emission way, is to deliver a product or service. That is a mindset change and will require us to maybe have adopted different technology or use a different business model to sell our service or product. All of it is a change in mindset. Finally, from the consumer's viewpoint, right? Just what should you or I do in our daily lives? Well, we've got to think about, not wasting. Because a huge amount of the products and services we actually create in today's world are wasted in use. Did you know, for example, that half of the food we produce globally is wasted? In the West or in affluent countries like this, it's wasted in our refrigerator. In some of the poorer nations, it's wasted before it gets to the refrigerator because they don't have refrigeration to bring it from the fields to the market, right? So imagine if we could cut back on that waste, and that is upon all of us, not just people in the energy industry.
سيدة براتيما، دعيني أخذ موضوع آخر، موضوع التمويل قد يكون من أهم الأمور لإنجاز أي شيء. اليوم نحن نتحدث بأن الانفستمنت بحسب الأرقام الأخيرة تجاوزت $1 تريليون التي تم استثمارها بتكنولوجيا المناخ. هذه الأرقام الأخيرة، ولكن نحن بحاجة لأرقام مضاعفة خلال السنوات القادمة، فبالتالي يجب أن يكون هناك توجه للمزيد من الاستثمارات. كيف لنا أن نجعل هذا الموضوع جذاب للمؤسسات المالية بحيث تضع هذه الاستثمارات في تقنيات المناخ؟
So it's a really good point, right? But we've seen what Dr. Sultan also talked about. In these last 2 or 3 years, we've seen enormous amounts of capital going into climate tech. A lot of this has gone into very early stage companies. So they are the inventions, to come up with new technologies. A lot of it has got into much later stage. What are we ready to already? That's already there and we're ready to scale. Where it's lacking is in projects, big projects to implement these technologies and show that climate tech is now available and useful to build products and services. And for that, you do need government policies. It's very hard to scale energy and infrastructure projects without any government support. And then you also need the help of development banks. Recently, the US passed a bill called the IRA, which is and it's an infrastructure bill. Very, very valuable. And we're seeing huge acceleration in hydrogen, in carbon capture, use and storage, direct air capture, in a lot of efficiencies, in battery storage. It's a very exciting bill. And we're hoping to see progress like that across many, many governments. And that's what we need. Because we need that competition also across the world. And we need also to see it flowing to both the global south as well as the north.
اليوم العالم سيحتاج المزيد من الطاقة مع ازدياد عدد السكان، فبالتالي صناع القرار أمام معضلة. الأولى استمرار تأمين طاقة سليمة للنمو الاقتصادي، وبالمقابل أيضا العمل الحثيث المهم لموضوع التغيير المناخي. ما هو السيناريو العقلاني الذي قد يضعنا بالمكان الصحيح؟ الوصول إلى أجندة 0 انبعاثات وفي المقابل عدم تعطيل الاقتصاد.
Yeah, it's a really, really important question, right? Because everybody has a theory and there are all these models and numbers, but what does reality look like? Well, when you think about the reality, we want growth because much of this world needs growth. But last year we had 3% GDP growth globally. 3% every year means that our economy will double in 23 years. Now imagine this. Today's economy, there's almost no recycling, about 7%. So to double our economy in 23 years, we need double the amount of raw materials. We need double the amount of production because we don't recycle and we don't have a circular economy. That's very, very difficult to achieve. And that's why you have all these trillions and trillions of dollars that you expect. But when you step back and you look at today's economy and infrastructure, you find it's actually very wasteful. 50%, as I said, of food is wasted. 2/3 of energy, primary energy that we produce, is wasted from an efficiency perspective as you go across the system. If you just think about your car, it's probably about 20% efficient unless it's electric. So what happens to the other 80% of the fuel you put in your car? So think of that way. So what we should do, what we must do, and this can be done in the global south and the north, is we should look at all these inefficiencies across our system and reduce it. As we're building new energy sources like hydrogen or nuclear, because if we try to double our economy in 23 years, but we don't decouple the energy system or the raw materials from that, we will create a bigger problem for ourselves than we already have. So it's really critical for us to think in terms of the maximum use of the resources we are, because we have been blessed with beautiful resources across the world. Let's use them carefully, let's not waste them, and let's consider a circular economy in everything we do.
هل أصبح هناك وعي أكثر بأنه ما يحتاجه العالم هو طاقة نظيفة بغض النظر عن مصدر الطاقة أم لا؟
I think what you just said is absolutely correct. And I think that message is very mixed to the general population, because people are picking and choosing. They're saying it's renewable or oil and gas or not this or not that. The actual fact of the matter is it's all of the above, because our thirst for energy keeps increasing year after year after year, not just from a population, but because the population wants to use more. And in order to feed that beast, we're going to need everything. The challenge for us is to make everything clean.